When I posted that photo, I wasn't trying to show off. I didn't even add a caption. Just the view, floor-to-ceiling windows, a skyline that looked like it belonged in a movie, and a polished walnut desk that still smelled new. I was proud, sure, but mostly, I just wanted to mark the moment. A quiet celebration. My name's Mason, I'm 34, and I've worked my way up through more closed doors than I can count. The kind of doors that don't open just because you're smart or polite or show up early. The kind that need leverage. Or patience. Or a last name that rings bells, something I never had. Growing up, I was the career one in the family. You know the type. No wife, no kids, too many takeout containers in the fridge. I used to get those questions at every family gathering. When are you going to settle down? Don't you want a little one running around? My aunt, Cheryl, was the worst about it. She had this way of smiling while stabbing you with her words. All that success, but no one to share it with, she'd say, then glance at her daughter with that performative sigh, as if I were some tragic example. My cousin Kelsey followed her lead like a shadow. Everything Cheryl believed, Kelsey parroted, but with more bitterness, more edge, like she had to double down just to keep up. I was used to it. Family holidays were a minefield of subtle digs. I stopped bringing anyone to them years ago, not because I didn't date, but because it just wasn't worth the drama. If it wasn't questions about rings and baby names, it was assumptions about why I was still single. Too picky, Aunt Cheryl would whisper, not realizing I could hear her from the kitchen. Or maybe she knew. Maybe that was the point. Still, I kept things civil. I'd show up with a bottle of wine, smile through the passive-aggressive comments, and leave early. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted peace. But that photo, the one I posted the day after my promotion, lit a match I didn't even know was sitting in gasoline. 10 minutes after posting it, the comment popped up. Cheryl, must be nice not having kids to worry about. No emoji, no context, just that. Like she couldn't resist. Like it physically hurt her to see me happy without her definition of success. I stared at it for a minute, thumb hovering over the screen. I almost replied. Almost. But what was the point? So I let it sit there, hoping it would be ignored. But then Kelsey jumped in. Real success is building a family, not a bank account. And that one stung, not because I believed it, but because it was such a deliberate jab. As if all I'd worked for, all the nights I stayed late, all the weekends I skipped out on parties to grind, meant nothing. As if I was somehow less than, because I didn't choose her path. Married at 24, 2 kids by 28. Now living paycheck to paycheck and always borrowing money from grandma to keep the lights on. But she was the one with real success. I didn't delete the comments. I didn't reply. I just locked my phone and went back to work. I had a client coming in to discuss refinancing, and I wasn't going to let them ruin my day. But I'd be lying if I said I forgot about it. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying it over and over. Not the words, but the feeling behind them. The disdain, the resentment, the way they had always looked down on me for not fitting into their mold, and how they just couldn't stand to see me win outside of it. What they didn't know, what no one in the family really knew, was that my new office wasn't just a promotion. It was the final step in a 10-year plan. I didn't just climb the ladder, I built a new one. I had quietly bought into the brokerage I'd been working at since my mid-20s. And when the previous owner retired, I didn't apply for his job. I bought him out. I didn't make a big deal out of it. I didn't flash my title around or send out announcements. I wanted to move in silence, as they say, because when people know you've made it, they treat you differently, and not always in a good way. So I watched. I waited. And I kept showing up to family dinners with that same polite smile, even though every time Cheryl asked if I was seeing someone, it felt like a trap. Even though Kelsey once made a joke about how I probably had a work wife and didn't know how to talk to real women anymore. I took it. I let it roll off. Because I had a theory. When I was testing, people show you who they are when they think you have nothing to offer them. But when they think you might hold the keys to something they need, that's when the mask slips. And sure enough, it started with a message. 2 months after the photo. From Kelsey. Hey Mason, hope you're well. I was wondering if you could help me with something. My husband and I are trying to refinance our house, and the bank said the application got flagged. Something about needing additional approval? Anyway, just wanted to see if you had any insight. Can we talk? No mention of the comment. No apology. Just a polite ask, as if nothing had ever happened. I stared at the message for a while. Then I went back and found the screenshot, the one with the comments still visible. I sent it to her. No text, no explanation. Scene 9:42 p.m. And that's where things started to shift. Suddenly, Aunt Cheryl was calling my mom more often, asking how I was, dropping little comments like, "Mason's always been so smart, hasn't he?" My mom asked if something had happened. I told her not to worry, but I was watching, waiting, because the mortgage wasn't the only thing they'd need help with. If you asked anyone in the family, they'd tell you Aunt Cheryl was just old-fashioned. That was the word they loved to use, like it excused every backhanded comment, every judgmental stare, every manipulative whisper she dropped at Sunday dinners. But it wasn't just old-fashioned. It was superiority, entitlement, this deep-rooted belief that she had the moral high ground because she'd ticked the boxes society handed her when she was 20. Marriage, kids, house with a picket fence. Everything after that, she treated like a personal crusade to prove she had chosen the one true path. And anyone who veered from it? Well, we were just sad little strays who'd eventually see the light. And for a long time, I tolerated it. Bit my tongue. Smiled through the jabs. Part of me kept hoping they'd grow out of it. Or maybe just grow tired of it. But it never stopped. In fact, after that comment on my photo, it got worse. Much worse. The next family dinner was at Grandma's place. A cozy little house with lace curtains, a kitchen that always smelled like rosemary, and a living room that somehow hadn't changed since 1993. I almost didn't go. I figured I'd make an appearance, drop off a bottle of wine like always, and sneak out after dessert. But from the moment I walked in, I could tell the air was different. Kelsey was already there, sitting at the dining table with her laptop open and a stack of documents beside her. Her husband, Mark, hovered behind her, awkward and silent as always. Cheryl was perched on the armrest of Grandma's recliner, sipping tea like she was holding court. "Oh look," Cheryl said when I walked in. "The bachelor graces us with his presence. No +1 again." I just smiled. "Nice to see you too, Aunt Cheryl." Mark offered a quiet nod. Kelsey didn't even look up from the screen. I sat down in the far corner of the living room, near the old record player, and busied myself with my phone. It was Grandma who finally broke the tension. "Mason, honey, would you mind helping Kelsey and Mark? They're trying to get their paperwork together for the mortgage, and I thought maybe you'd know a thing or two." Cheryl jumped in before I could answer. "You're in finance, aren't you?" Or something like that. I didn't bother correcting her. "Sure, I can take a look." Kelsey finally turned her laptop around. "We're refinancing. Interest rates are brutal right now, but we need the cash. Kids' school stuff, home repairs, that kind of thing. But the bank said there's a red flag on our application. Said it needed a senior approval." Her tone was clipped. Professional. Like we weren't cousins. Like she hadn't taken a public shot at me 2 months ago, and then messaged me like nothing happened. I scrolled through the documents. Yep, it was my firm. And yes, their application had been flagged for inconsistent income reporting and high credit utilization. But I didn't say that. Not yet. "Yeah, I know the team that handles these," I said casually. "I'll look into it." "Thanks," she said flatly, already turning the laptop back to herself. That dinner dragged on forever. Cheryl kept steering the conversation toward parenting and marriage, her favorite subjects. At one point, she told a story about how Mark had installed a shelf all by himself, and then turned to me with a smirk. Of course, Mason probably just hires someone to do things like that. That's what happens when you're rich and alone. I was halfway through a glass of wine and nearly choked. Mark just looked at his plate. Kelsey didn't laugh, but she didn't speak up either. I left early, like I always did, but this time something sat heavier in my chest. Not anger exactly, more like a cold, heavy disappointment. Because no matter how much I gave, no matter how much I accomplished, to them I was still just Mason the bachelor. Mason the childless, the selfish, the one who didn't know real love. Never mind the years I spent grinding my way through college while working 2 jobs. Never mind that I helped my parents pay off their mortgage. Never mind that I'd quietly sent Grandma a check every Christmas since 2016 to help with her prescriptions. None of it mattered. Because I didn't have a toddler covered in spaghetti sauce or a minivan with a car seat in the back. The real breaking point came 2 weeks later. Grandma called me out of the blue. Her voice was trembling, which scared me more than anything. "Mason, honey, I'm so sorry to ask, but could you come over?" Now, I didn't ask questions. I grabbed my keys and left the office. When I arrived, Kelsey's car was already in the driveway. Inside, the living room was a mess. Papers everywhere. Grandma was sitting on the couch, her glasses in her lap, eyes red like she'd been crying. What happened? I asked. Kelsey stood in the kitchen, arms crossed. Grandma's been confused about her finances. We're just helping her get organized. Confused? I asked, narrowing my eyes. She's been misplacing bills, Kelsey said. And she forgot she signed a few things for us. We're just fixing it. I looked at Grandma. Is that true? Grandma looked away. I don't remember signing anything. But Kelsey said I did. Something snapped in me. Kelsey, what did you have her sign? Nothing serious, she said too quickly. Just a co-signer form for our refinance. It's fine. We just needed a little push to get the loan approved. It's not like she's paying anything. It's just paperwork. You made Grandma a co-signer? My voice was low, cold. Without telling me? Without telling her what she was signing. It's not a big deal, Mason. It's a huge deal. She's almost 80. You've put her credit at risk. If you default on anything, they come after her. Kelsey rolled her eyes. We're not going to default. We just needed help. Not all of us are rolling in cash like you. That line. That bitter, acidic line. I clenched my fists. I'll get this reversed, I said, turning to Grandma. I promise. Kelsey stepped forward. You don't have the right to undo it. Grandma signed it. It's legal. Then let's test that theory, I said. Let's pull up the audio from the home security system. You know the one I installed last year? It has a mic in the living room. Her face paled. You didn't tell her what she was signing, did you? No answer. I walked over to the shelf, pulled out the SD card from the hidden unit, and slipped it into my laptop. The next 10 minutes were excruciating. The audio was clear. Kelsey, just sign here, Grandma. It's a bank thing. Grandma, what for? Kelsey, just something to prove you're helping us with the kids. It's nothing. We already talked about it, remember? Grandma, I don't remember. Kelsey, it's fine. Just sign. We're in a hurry. Silence. Then the sound of a pen scratching paper. I closed the laptop. Kelsey's arms were trembling now. That's not what it sounds like. I stood. You manipulated an elderly woman into co-signing a mortgage. That's elder financial abuse. Cheryl chose that exact moment to walk in, holding a casserole. What's going on here? I looked at her. Your daughter committed fraud. Cheryl's smile didn't even flicker. Don't be dramatic. Families help each other. No, I said, stepping closer. Families protect each other. What you've all done, that's using someone. That's lying. That's risking her future just so you can fix your mistakes. She laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, please. You're acting like you're some hero. You think money makes you better than us. No, I said. But it sure shows who you really are when you don't have it. The silence that followed was suffocating. I turned to Grandma. Do you trust me? Tears rolled down her cheeks as she nodded. Then I'll handle this. I left that day with every document, every recording, every digital trail Kelsey had left on Grandma's Wi-Fi. I spent the next few days working late, talking to our firm's legal team, talking to a separate elder abuse attorney on my own dime. And all the while, I didn't respond to the frantic messages Cheryl and Kelsey started sending once they realized how serious I was. They thought this was just another family spat. They had no idea the storm I was about to bring down on them. For the first time in years, I felt like a stranger in my own family. The fallout from that day with Grandma was swift and ugly. Cheryl called me that night, her voice already sharp with rehearsed outrage before I even picked up. How dare you humiliate Kelsey like that? She was just trying to help her family. I could hear the clatter of dishes in the background, the raised volume of a TV show no one was watching. I imagined her pacing around her kitchen with the phone clutched to her ear like a weapon. She lied to Grandma. I said, that's not helping. That's manipulation. Cheryl scoffed. Oh, give me a break. You've never understood what it's like to raise kids, to have real responsibilities. You think waving your fancy title around makes you better than us. No, I said calmly. But I do think it gives me the means and the moral obligation to protect someone who's being taken advantage of. That was the last time we spoke directly. From that point on, it was texts. Cold, short, mostly passive-aggressive. But what I hadn't expected was how the rest of the family reacted. It started with Uncle Rob unfollowing me on social media. Then my cousin Jenna sent me a message that said, you didn't have to go nuclear. You could have just talked to her. My own brother, Nate, who never said anything at family dinners, suddenly weighed in during a group call with my mom and said, Mason's always been kind of intense. Maybe he just snapped. Snapped? I was protecting Grandma, and somehow I was the villain? Even my mom, sweet, conflict-avoiding, soft-spoken mom, told me she was tired of the drama and asked if I could just let it go. I didn't respond. I couldn't, because part of me wanted to scream. The other part? It just wanted to disappear for a while. So I did. I took some of my saved-up PTO and stepped away from the brokerage for 2 weeks. I didn't check emails. Didn't answer calls unless they were from my attorney or my assistant. I turned off notifications and booked a cabin 3 hours north, overlooking a lake surrounded by pines that were just beginning to lose their green to the golden hues of fall. At first, I didn't know what to do with the silence. My hands kept reaching for my phone out of habit. I found myself drafting imaginary replies to texts I would never send, sarcastic comebacks, long-winded explanations, questions I knew would never get answered honestly. But slowly, painfully, I started to feel it. The quiet was healing me. I watched the sun rise with a mug of bitter black coffee. I journaled for the first time in a decade. I read a novel cover to cover in one sitting. And I cried. Not once, not twice, but several times. Not just from the betrayal, but from the years of swallowing it down, of laughing off digs, of playing the peacemaker, the reasonable one, while others tore into me with smiles on their faces. I realized something in that silence. I had spent so much of my adult life trying to prove I wasn't the selfish one, that I could be the successful, stable guy and still be part of the family, even if I didn't fit their mold, even if I didn't have a spouse or kids or a Pinterest board full of school lunch ideas. But they didn't want me to fit in. They wanted me beneath them. And when I didn't stay there, they resented it. When I got back to the city, I was different. Not hardened, but clear. I reopened the file with Kelsey's refinance application and took detailed notes. Their debt-to-income ratio was dangerously high. Their credit score had taken hits from missed utility payments. The only reason the application had even gotten through the first round of review was because of Grandma's co-signed assets. Assets I had successfully lobbied to be removed using the audio evidence and an affidavit from Grandma herself, prepared by the elder care attorney I'd hired. The brokerage's compliance team red-flagged the application. It was rejected, formally and permanently. But I didn't stop there. Remember that silence I moved in? I used it again. I started rebuilding, not just myself, but my entire approach to life. I got a new office. Bigger, quieter, decorated on my terms. Less glass, more warmth. I hired 2 new junior brokers, one from an underrepresented background, the other a former stay-at-home mom returning to the workforce after a decade. I mentored them personally. I made it my mission to build the kind of company where people like me, outsiders, underdogs, the underestimated, could win without needing someone else's permission. At night, I'd walk home through the city instead of taking a car. I'd pass strangers and wonder about their lives. I'd stop in the corner bookstore and chat with the owner. I even adopted a dog from a shelter, Scout, a 3-legged mutt with more energy than I knew what to do with. He grounded me. In the mornings, we'd walk down to the park, and for the first time in years, I'd leave my phone at home. Just me, him, and the sound of leaves crunching underfoot. I didn't post about any of it. No photos of Scout. No status updates about the new hires. No captions about my healing journey. Just silence. Intentional silence. Because what I realized was this. People don't change because you prove them wrong. They change when their own world stops working, and they're forced to ask why. And while my world had gotten quieter, theirs hadn't. Kelsey and Mark began showing up more at Grandma's, trying to play the caring family role. Cheryl made a point of calling my mom every week with updates, always making sure to mention how stressed Kelsey was and how unfairly the bank had treated her. My mom asked once if I would consider reaching out. I smiled and said, I already did. She didn't ask what I meant, but the ripple effects were already starting. Turns out, the bank Kelsey and Mark applied through, it wasn't the only institution tied to my brokerage. And when they tried to apply again, this time through a different lender, I got the notification. Because I had instituted a flag, not a denial, not a blacklisting, just a note. A note that said, due diligence required. Applicant history includes prior red flag for elder co-signing without informed consent. Request additional documentation before proceeding. It was enough to slow everything down. Enough to send it to a human reviewer. Enough to require Kelsey and Mark to explain in detail. They had no idea it came from me, but I wasn't doing it for revenge. Not anymore. I was doing it for Grandma. Because despite everything, she still made excuses for them. Still said things like, I know Kelsey didn't mean harm, or Cheryl's just trying to hold the family together. But I could see the way her hands shook when she opened the mail. The way she double-checked her checkbook now. The way she flinched when the phone rang and she didn't recognize the number. They took her trust and twisted it. So I started spending more time with her. Every Sunday afternoon, I'd drive over with Scout, and we'd sit on the porch while she told me stories I'd never heard. About my grandfather, about her childhood, about her dreams of being a librarian before she got married. She started calling me her guardian angel, though I never saw myself that way. I was just finally doing the right thing. No more keeping the peace. No more biting my tongue. I told her everything, eventually, about the application, the audio, the flag I placed. She didn't get angry. She just held my hand and said, "Thank you for protecting me, even when I didn't know I needed it." And that was the moment I knew. I hadn't lost my family. I'd just outgrown the part of it that didn't see me. But as much peace as I'd found, there was still one thing left hanging. One message. One final attempt at damage control. It came 3 weeks later. A text. From Cheryl. Just 3 words. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. I knew what she wanted. I knew the pressure was mounting. That the loans were slipping further out of reach. That the public image she'd worked so hard to build, of the perfect, supportive mother and the always right older sister, was starting to crack. I didn't reply with words. I sent one thing. A screenshot. Kelsey's comment from 2 months ago. Real success is building a family, not a bank account. Scene. 9:42 p.m. And then, silence. But I knew it wouldn't last. Because people like Cheryl, they never give up without trying one last move. And something told me hers was coming soon. But this time, I was ready. After years of biting my tongue, I had something I'd never had before, not just leverage. Proof. I had documentation, signatures, recorded audio, and a compliance team that trusted me without question. But even more important than that, I had their attention. That single screenshot I sent Cheryl had hit harder than any speech I could have given. This scene 9:42 p.m. at the bottom of our message thread might as well have been carved in stone. For 2 weeks, she didn't message again. Didn't comment on my mom's Facebook posts. Didn't even try her usual passive-aggressive route through extended family. But I knew her too well. Silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. She was regrouping. And so was I. The first thing I did was revisit the mortgage applications, both the one they originally submitted and the one they tried to sneak in through a smaller regional bank I partially owned. I had eyes on everything now. Thanks to the notes I placed in the internal systems, both applications were in limbo. Neither could be approved without a compliance officer's signature, and I'd already scheduled a meeting with mine for the following week. Her name was Mariana. Sharp, fair, and meticulous to a fault. She had no patience for fraud, and even less for manipulation. I invited her to lunch under the pretext of discussing workflow improvements. Halfway through our coffee, I slid a folder across the table. "What's this?" she asked. I kept my voice neutral. "A client application that's been bouncing between teams. I think it warrants a deeper look." She opened the folder. Read for a few minutes in silence. Then she looked up. "Didn't this come through us a few months ago?" "Yes," I said. "And again recently. The client's income stream is irregular, and they previously attempted to use an elderly co-signer under misleading circumstances. I have the audio if you want to hear it." Her expression didn't change, but I saw her jaw clench. "Send me everything. If they try a third route, I'll flag their name for formal review." "Already done," I said. It wasn't personal for her, just policy. But for me, it was personal, because this wasn't just about revenge. It was about establishing a line that had never existed in our family. The line that said, you don't get to trample people and call it love. You don't get to weaponize family guilt every time life doesn't go your way. Next, I went to Grandma. Not to plot, just to talk. I told her everything I was doing. How the applications were being reviewed, how the documents had been processed, how Kelsey and Mark's entire credit history was now tied to their decisions, not hers. I laid it all out in simple language, with no sugarcoating. She listened, holding her tea with both hands. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she nodded. "You don't have to protect me anymore," she said softly. I smiled. "I'm not. I'm protecting the version of you that trusted people who didn't deserve it." She looked out the window for a long time, then said, "Your grandfather would have liked that." And that meant more to me than anything. After that, I started laying the groundwork. Not for a lawsuit. Not yet. That wasn't the goal. This wasn't about legal ruin. It was about exposure. It was about pulling the curtain back and letting people see them for who they really were. So I started gathering. Every comment, every voicemail, every passive-aggressive message Cheryl ever left on family threads. I had old screenshots, archived emails, even a text from 2 years ago where Kelsey asked Grandma for a loan and promised to handle it like last time. But the real gem? A bank statement. I'd asked Grandma if she had any record of what Kelsey had borrowed over the years. At first, she said no. Then, hesitantly, she pulled out a shoebox from the back of her closet. Inside were old receipts, printouts, even handwritten notes on lined yellow paper. One note was scrawled in blue pen. $4,000. School supplies and dentist. Promised to pay back by January, K. The date was 4 years ago. It was never paid back. Another note. $200, emergency rent. Just a loan. Thank you. And another. And another. They added up fast. Small amounts, maybe. But in total, over $17,000 across 6 years. I organized them into a spreadsheet. Then I added dates and interest estimates. Not because I planned to sue, but because I wanted to be ready. I wanted Kelsey and Cheryl to see what their actions looked like when stripped of all the excuses and emotional manipulation. This wasn't helping family. This was theft by erosion. One cut at a time, until there was nothing left. By now, I was a different person. Not colder, just less tolerant. I stopped going to family gatherings entirely. My mom was conflicted, but she understood. She'd started to see the cracks too. Cheryl had always made her feel lesser, in subtle little ways. And now that I'd drawn the line, my mom was starting to stand taller beside it. Still, Cheryl wasn't done. One day, she showed up at Grandma's house. Unannounced. With a pie. I wasn't there, but Grandma called me right after. She came by. Said she was just checking in. Did she ask for anything? Grandma paused. Not directly, but she asked about the house. Said if anything ever happened, she'd want to make sure I left it to someone who'd honor the family name. I closed my eyes. She's testing the waters, I said. Just nod and smile if she comes again. Don't commit to anything. Grandma agreed, but I could hear the sadness in her voice. I knew what I had to do next. It was time to put something in writing. I met with an estate lawyer, this time for Grandma. We reviewed her will. We updated it. We added a clause that no co-signed financial obligations would be honored posthumously, and that the house would be held in trust to avoid manipulation from any family member. Grandma cried when she signed it. Not out of fear, out of relief. "This is the first time I've felt safe in years," she whispered. That hit me like a freight train. Because all this time, I thought I was the only one feeling isolated. The only one carrying emotional weight like a backpack full of bricks. But she'd been carrying it too. For longer. And that's when I decided to go one step further. I called up an old friend, Natalie, a journalist who specialized in financial abuse and elder fraud cases. We hadn't spoken in a while, but she picked up on the second ring. "Long time, stranger. What's up?" "I have a story," I said, "and I think you'll want to hear it." I didn't give her names. Not yet. Just the facts. A woman in her 70s manipulated into co-signing a loan. A string of unreturned loans from family members. Recorded audio. A paper trail. The psychological toll. She was silent for a moment. Then, "Mason, if this is real, it's huge." "It's real," I said. "I just don't know if I'm ready to go public." "You don't have to be," she replied. "Not yet. But let's build the file. When you're ready, we'll decide what to do." And so we built it. Quietly. Carefully. She interviewed Grandma. Documented the timeline. Cross-referenced everything with compliance logs and internal memos I provided. Scrubbed of company branding, of course. I didn't want to ruin Cheryl and Kelsey. That's not what this was about. I just wanted a sword hanging over their heads. One they couldn't see, but could feel. And if they pushed again? If they tried one more guilt trip, one more fake smile, one more emotional ambush? I'd let the sword drop. Because I was done playing nice. And soon, they'd realize they weren't the only ones who could pull strings behind the scenes. They just didn't know it yet. It started with a phone call. Not to Cheryl. Not to Kelsey. To Mark. I knew he'd answer. He always did. Mark was the kind of man who didn't like confrontation but feared consequences even more. The kind of guy who'd avoid eye contact in every room and agree with whoever spoke loudest. So when his name flashed on my caller ID one Tuesday morning, right after I'd sent him an innocuous little email labeled "Request for Follow-up," I picked up without hesitation. "Hello." His voice was tight, nervous. "Hey Mark, got your reply. Just wanted to chat quickly. Thought it might be easier than going back and forth by email." Sure. Yeah. What's up?" I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "Just wanted to confirm that you and Kelsey are still pursuing the new mortgage application." He hesitated. Yes. We're working with a new lender now." "What?" "Well," I said, keeping my tone light, "you listed an asset that's under legal dispute. Specifically, the trust that holds the deed to Grandma's house." Silence. I continued. "It's no longer counted toward your collateral ratio, and it can't be leveraged in any future applications without trustee consent." "That's me, by the way. I'm the trustee." More silence. "And since I'm speaking to you now instead of your wife, I'll assume she's still upset." He cleared his throat. "Look, Mason, we didn't mean for things to get out of hand. It was just, we needed help. And instead of asking," I said calmly, "you forged help. You bullied it. You manipulated it out of a woman too kind to say no. And then you mocked me publicly while privately trying to use my own firm to cover your bad decisions." He said nothing. I could almost hear him nodding. "I'm going to give you a choice," I said. "Option 1. You and Kelsey withdraw your current mortgage application, write a formal letter apologizing to Grandma, and agree in writing to never solicit financial assistance from her again." "And option 2? He asked. I didn't answer right away. I opened the file I had on my desktop, pages and pages of documentation. The audio recording, the spreadsheet of unpaid loans, the signed legal affidavits, the notes from the interview Grandma gave to Natalie, the journalist. I hadn't given Natalie the green light yet, but everything was prepped, vetted, ready. "Option 2 is you proceed," I said finally. And I let the story run. "Names redacted, sure. But if you think people won't connect the dots when Grandma starts getting questions from friends, neighbors, church ladies, then you're underestimating how fast reputations burn." He exhaled slowly. "I'll talk to Kelsey." "No," I said. "You won't. You'll decide. Because she didn't sign the loan. You did. It's your name on the forms. Your liability. Your mess." He stopped. Then, finally, "Okay, I'll take option 1. I ended the call without saying goodbye. 3 days later, a scanned letter landed in my inbox. It was clearly written by Mark. Apologetic. Careful. Avoiding direct admissions of guilt, but owning the pain they'd caused. Attached was a second letter, typed but signed in Kelsey's handwriting, echoing the same sentiments. It wasn't heartfelt, but it was legal. A few hours later, Mariana from compliance emailed me a screenshot. Their mortgage application had been withdrawn. That should have been the end of it. But Cheryl couldn't resist. Not a week later, I got a call from my mom. Voice thin, uncertain. "She came by today," she said. "Said you were threatening the family. Said you were waving your money around to make everyone feel small." I closed my eyes. "What did you say?" "I told her to get off my porch," my mom said, her voice suddenly steady. "And that if she ever wanted to speak to you, she'd need to learn how to apologize first." I grinned. "Thanks, Mom. But that wasn't enough for me. Not yet. Because even though the damage was undone, even though the application was dead and Grandma's future safe, they hadn't learned. Not really. Cheryl still believed she had the moral high ground. That I was some cold, bitter man trying to punish his family for not clapping loud enough. So I made one last call. To Natalie. "Let's run it," I said. She didn't need context. 3 weeks later, the piece went live. Front page of a national finance blog. "When family crosses the line, the quiet epidemic of elder financial abuse." The story was anonymous but hauntingly familiar to anyone who knew us. It walked through the manipulation, the forged co-signing, the guilt games, and the long trail of unreturned money. Quotes from the elder attorney, financial compliance experts, even Grandma herself, though her name was changed. It exploded. Thousands of shares. Dozens of comments from people with similar stories. Financial advisors reposted it. Forums discussed it. A segment even ran on a local TV network, dramatizing parts of the article with reenactments. And right in the middle of that storm, Cheryl. Suddenly, her friends weren't returning her calls. The women in her book club took a break. Her social media went dark. Kelsey, who had always fancied herself an influencer mom, lost a few small brand partnerships when people dug up her old public comments, like the one under my office view photo. It didn't matter that names weren't used. People aren't stupid. And in small suburban circles, whispers move faster than facts. Grandma's phone rang constantly, but now it was people calling to support her, to say they were sorry, that they were proud of her for speaking up, that they'd had no idea what she'd been going through. The week after the article dropped, I went over with Scout like I always did. She met me at the door with a smile that actually reached her eyes. "Feel lighter?" I asked. She nodded. I never thought people would listen to someone my age, but they did. I handed her a printed copy of the article in a clear sleeve. "Frame it," I said. "You're a damn survivor." We laughed. It felt real this time. And Cheryl? She tried one last Hail Mary. I came home to a letter one afternoon, no return address. Inside was a single page, handwritten. Sloppy cursive. "Mason, we've all made mistakes. But airing family business to the world? That's a new low, even for you. You may think you've won. But success isn't a title. It's who shows up when you're old and sick. Let's see if your money holds your hand when that day comes." Cheryl. I read it once. Then again. Then I slid it into a manila folder labeled Reminders. Because Cheryl never learned. And maybe she never would. But that didn't matter. She was irrelevant now. The story wasn't about her anymore. It was about Grandma, who finally got to breathe. About my mom, who finally stood up for herself. About me, the black sheep turned wolf. And about the day I realized being alone didn't mean being unloved. It meant being free. I stood in my office one morning, staring out that same window I once posted on social media. A new coffee mug in my hand. Scout curled up on the rug. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove anything to anyone. I didn't need their approval. I had peace. And they had nothing to leverage. Because the moment they lost access to Grandma, to my silence, to my forgiveness, they lost the only currency they ever really had. Let them live in the past. I was already building the future. And this time, every brick had my name on it.